Welcome to FiliBUSTED. My name is Griffin Browning. This is our Diversity in America episode, where we're going to talk a little bit about multiculturalism in modern America, a little bit about immigration, and kind of end up talking about our new American culture. The panel that we put together for this episode was pretty intentional. We wanted kind of three different comedians in Columbus that all come from different backgrounds and each kind of have a unique perspective on what it means to be an American. Before I introduce them, I want to introduce my co-host, Pat Deering. Pat, you want to say hi?
Hi.
That was great.
It was.
I also want to thank Brian Doney for filming and doing sound and editing for us. And with that, let's get right to introducing our panelists. Up first, we have kind of a newer comedian in the Columbus comedy scene, I think, Bryan. Greg, tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and kind of, I guess, your journey to America a little bit.
Well, yeah, it was a long one. I came from Sydney, Australia, grew up there first 24 years of my life, and I've been here for the last 12. So, yeah, literally a third of my life spent over here, and it's sort of hopping all around different places in the U.S. and been in Columbus for the last 4 years and doing comedy for the last 2.
Gotcha. Can I ask what made you make the big move from Australia?
The big move, it was kind of based on just chasing a dream, which I think we'll unpack a little bit later on in the show is the reason why I came over here to begin with. But it was always a dream of mine to live in the U.S. My dad worked here for a long time. And, of course, all of our TV and movies and music is from America. So grew up fantasizing about this country, and one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try, see how it pans out. And
Did it live up to the expectations so far?
Well, yeah, 12 years and I haven't got rid of me yet. So, yeah, so far so good.
Up next, we have Walta Yoseph. Walta, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So my family is from Eritrea, and I was born and raised in Kenya. I lived there for 16 years. I'm ethnically Eritrean, culturally Eritrean, Kenyan, and American now. I've been living in America for the past 10 years, mostly in Columbus.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And lastly, we have the one and only Gilli. Gilli, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Man, y'all already know.
For our few listeners that haven't heard of Gilli,
all right,
give us a little background.
I'm from Dallas, Texas originally. My mother is black and Blackfoot Indian. My father's Irish and American Italian. If that makes sense. I just made up a whole nationality, didn't it? Yeah, so I've been in Columbus since 2000, and I've been doing comedy for about 3 years now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's all you get out of me.
We'll dig into it a little bit more as we go. And actually, just while we're introducing people, Pat, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your family backgrounds?
I was born and raised here in the States, Cleveland, Ohio. Actually, my parents, though, are immigrants. Specifically, on my mother's side, that's the most interesting story there. Her family attained refugee status during the Troubles. They immigrated here from Northern Ireland.
All right. And just in the interest of full disclosure, I probably have one of the boring stories. The coolest thing about my family is we can trace our family history back to the Mayflower. So some of the first American,
it was you.
It was. Yeah. We'll get into that later, Gilli. Yeah. Sorry, man.
I thought you looked familiar.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys for being here. And to kind of jump right into it, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening in the elections right now. By the time we release this, we may fully know who the candidates are going to be, but I still want to talk about everybody a little bit. Obviously, Trump has kind of been outspoken against a lot of minority groups. And even in some ways, kind of the two other main contenders, at least at the time of this recording, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, have also had comments to say about certain minority groups. What I want to ask you guys first is there are certain people that are saying, people like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, who have kind of a minority backgrounds, that they're actually kind of turning their back on their own history a little bit by not fully supporting immigration or supporting multiculturalism. What would you guys say about that? Do candidates owe it to certain groups based on their own history? Gilli, why don't you open that up?
Do they owe? I mean, I don't understand. They don't owe anybody anything, but I guess it depends because it's not usually the candidate that's really the person that decides what's put out to the public. So I don't know.
Okay. So do you think that they're representing their own views, or is someone kind of telling them the way that they should approach these things?
I think Trump is a sham. I think America's up to some shit, and that's why they threw Trump. You used to have Michael Jackson. Whenever America was trying to get away with some shit, they'd have Michael Jackson do some stupid shit. Go touch another kid, Michael. Or hang him over the banister. You know?
Yeah.
And now they have Trump. Because everybody knows it's bullshit. We just got off topic. Yeah.
It's all right. We tend to do that here. Greg, what do you think about, the Republican candidates right now in terms of being fair to all Americans?
I think a lot of it is not so much a product of what they believe themselves. It's a part of the making themselves electable and the kind of base that they're pandering to. We've seen over the last 8 years since Barack Obama got elected, the slow denigration of that sort of middle America country backward racist stereotype that we've seen, but it's come more to the fore, with the rise of the Tea Party and now with the rise of Donald Trump. He's legitimized a lot of the feelings that were previously confined to people's cars and living rooms. And I think what a lot of these candidates, especially on the Republican side, have done is they've had to, well, I guess I'd better, make myself sound good to these people who don't like immigrants and don't like people of color and, who, if it means betraying my own family history for a few votes and for a little bit more power. I mean, look, here's 3 guys who have the opportunity to become president of the United States. And that's a powerful...
It's pandering.
It is. It's absolutely pandering.
Well, let me ask you guys then, I guess, what do you think is scarier? A candidate who is saying things to pander to voters, or someone who actually believes those things? Which is worse?
Well, actually, I don't feel like they owe it to themselves to acknowledge their personal history, but they do owe it to the population that they want to be the leader of. And, so I was thinking America has many different groups of people, and they should, they should represent all the groups if they want to be the president. But then Greg made the point about pandering to the population or pandering to the people. And so I feel like, now they're divided between trying to represent the whole country or pandering to the people who will vote for them.
Okay.
And I feel like pandering to the people who will vote for them is more dangerous than them actually having those beliefs, because by pandering, they're just inciting people. They're inciting hatred. If they believed it themselves too, I feel like they would still incite that hatred. I think they're both dangerous.
Yeah, and you do actually bring up a very cogent point about how American campaigns have actually kind of changed over the last few decades. That pandering to people who are going to vote for you, as opposed to attempting to appeal to the wide population as a whole. Yeah. It used to be campaigns were kind of a game of moderating yourself towards the middle to capture that elusive moderate or independent voter. And campaign managers have realized over the last few cycles, Karl Rove is one of the best examples, that you don't necessarily need to do that. You just need to inflame your base. You just need, the GOP doesn't need to capture the middle, they just need to mobilize the right. And same for the Democratic Party. They don't need to appeal to the moderates. They just need to mobilize left-leaning voters to get out to the polls. So that and I think that's absolutely an aspect to this entire thing.
In some respects, what that does, though, is it sends a message to the rest of the country that only one particular segment, only one particular demographic has an opinion that's worth representing. That, I mean, are you going to be, as Walter alluded to, are you going to be a president for the people, or are you going to be a president for just these people? Mm-hmm. That's the key, and that's, it depends on how you want to approach it, how many people you think you have on your side.
As long as we're talking about candidates on the Republican side, let's switch focuses here and talk a little bit about the Democratic side. Like I said before, by the time we post this episode, they may have already decided a nominee, but I do want to talk about both Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders historically has a lot of involvement in the civil rights campaigns and is currently, I mean, still involved in a lot of that. Hillary Clinton's history with that is a little more mixed. I think she supports it, right? I'm looking at Pat because I know that he's more of a Hillary Clinton supporter than I am. But I guess what I'm curious about is in the last couple election cycles, and especially in the current one, it seems like on the Republican side, we are seeing more minority candidates. People like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, you had Ben Carson, Bobby Jindal, who dropped out of the race pretty early on. It seems like there's more minorities now representing the Republican side, but it seems like the flip side of that is it's been kind of limited on the Democratic side, which typically the Democratic side seems to have a better relationship with minority groups. So I'm wondering, why do you think the Republicans have more of a representation with minorities, at least in the last few elections? Go ahead, Gilli.
Shit, everybody knows that there's black people in this country, man. I'm caught up on this Trump shit because I go back to when Ronald Reagan, yeah, that's his name, right? Ronald Reagan,
yeah.
Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. Like, Ronald Reagan was just a puppet, and George Bush really ran the country for 8 extra years, and then before he was elected president. I think we're looking at that same kind of thing with this Trump shit, man. Y'all shouldn't have gave me this drink. Should have never gave me this drink. I made good decisions before I got here.
You should have heard what he was requesting before the show.
We got it. They gave that to us.
Just a couple more things I want to talk about with the election before we kind of shift focuses here. One thing that is very interesting to me is there are groups of Muslims within the United States that are supporting Trump for president in spite of all of the things that he's said that seems like they wouldn't do that. Pat, you actually look like you want to jump in here, so I'm going to turn this question over to you first. Why do you think that this is happening? That he's still getting support from some of these groups that he's specifically kind of denounced publicly?
I could not tell you. I don't know if it's a weird mix of Stockholm syndrome and a little bit of class sprinkled in there. I'm sure all the people that are supporting him have money back in there somewhere within those minority groups. Because you did bring up the issue of how the Republican Party seems to be fielding all these minority candidates suddenly, which they are, but the voting demographic of the Republican Party is still anything but. And also, to a T, all of these minority candidates that the Republican Party have are all fantastically wealthy people. So I think class has to play into that a little bit. You can ignore a lot of bogus nonsense when you are behind a protective wall of multi-million dollars.
Well, you said it, Pat. It's about money. Yeah. It's money over religion, money over everything once you get into a certain bracket. And they don't give a fuck. That these guys are being quiet about, where they're from. It's for $1. This is America. My man was fantasizing about coming to America. You think he was coming for the sunsets? Bullshit. Coming for the money.
No, I think there's a very legitimate point to be made about Donald Trump being, as somebody who's worked in sales before, I know that sales is basically 20% product and 80% presentation, and Donald Trump is a salesman. You could argue that based on his business history, he's not a particularly good one.
Right.
But he has that presentation, he has that candor, that sort of, he's like a cult of personality. There's been comparisons, not to invoke Godwin's law here, but there have been comparisons made to figures like Hitler and Mussolini and guys like that who would stand up at the podium, shake their fist, and rile crowds up into believing that everything that he's saying is absolutely worth not only paying attention to, but donating money to, voting for, regardless of whether it's in their best interests or not. And this goes back a long way. You've seen, there are women who vote for candidates that would restrict women's rights. There are parents of LGBT children who would have voted for candidates that would have made their marriages illegal. All of this stuff, this goes back a long time. It's, if you can deliver something with enough panache, and make somebody think that, hey, this guy's pretty good. I like his style.
Racism runs deep.
The biggest argument for Trump is that he says
That was
what
a
he
rejected
feels.
campaign slogan for the Trump campaign.
That's on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. Right.
But the biggest argument for Trump that I hear from many of his supporters, and I try not to engage with too many of them because it makes my head hurt, but the ones that do talk about what they like about him is he says what he thinks. He says what he means. He tells it like it is. And what they really mean is he doesn't have a filter, but then your racist uncle doesn't have one either, and you don't want to vote for him.
Yeah.
Right. And I really hate that last one of he tells it how it is, because objectively, when you pull back the showmanship and just look at Donald Trump's policy opinions, they are so far removed from reality that he is not saying anything like it is. The man has zero idea how the fiscal economy in the United States works. He has no idea what monetary policy is. He's just lost.
Absolutely.
He's a fucking idiot.
Hear him try to answer a simple question about how he would pay for certain things, and what kind of this is more than just.
He legitimately thinks that we can
dictatorship.
bill another country for a thing.
Yes.
Like that there's some kind of electronic funds transfer system
That's actually
between different nations.
the next thing that I want to talk about. But before we jump into that, I do want to mention, Greg, one thing that you mentioned. I know that it's kind of the cool thing to do now to call modern politicians Hitler. Obviously, that has come up with Trump. Perhaps justifiably so. I mean, if you look historically at the way things happen, I do kind of want to ask you guys though. I mean, I'm not comparing, Trump directly to Hitler, but is there any fear with any of you that if he were elected, that things could become significantly worse for minority groups or some of the groups he's specifically named? Do you guys do you think that if he does get elected, that he follows through with some of these things that he's saying, or is it more just a game of getting elected at this point? Should we actually be afraid for minority groups?
Yeah, I'm not afraid of Trump being elected because of minority groups, because a lot of people think that poverty is black people. There are more white people, and it doesn't depend on the shade of color, but I mean, there's more white people down at the welfare office than there's about the same amount. So it's not about a color; it's about haves and have-nots. So I don't think it's a big problem because, like I told you before, I think Trump is just the front. Like, America's been lied to for so long. There's finally a guy that comes out and says what he feels. Hey, man. Everybody took this shit from Indians, so who gives a fuck?
We'll get to that. I promise. Yeah.
My concern is not as much legitimate because I really don't think that he has a chance of winning a general election.
He does.
I think he has a chance, but I think against either Hillary or Bernie, I think he would be defeated. But that doesn't stop the thoughts from playing in my head. Just a brief anecdote. I have two daughters, 9 and 6, and they're both dual citizens because they were both born in the States. And we filed the paperwork for them to be dual citizens of Australia and the United States. And what happened was a recent conversation that I had with my 9-year-old. I told her, you're going to have 2 passports now. And she's like, oh, we get to be from 2 countries now? That's awesome. And then within 5 seconds, she said, wait a minute. Does that mean that we have to leave if Trump becomes president? 9 years old, she's asking that question.
Yeah.
I don't have as much of a legitimate fear of him winning. But when I hear something like that from my child, why does she think? And bear in mind, I'm white. My ex-wife is white. Both of my kids. We could all stand in the middle of a Trump rally, clap at the right moments, say the right things, not make a noise, and nobody would know.
He would though. He would. He would get
the all-seeing third eye of Donald Trump would.
He would just be able. He would know something was off.
Yeah. Wait a second. You look way too funny to be here. But I worry about that when I hear about things like that. It probably puts ideas in my head that shouldn't be there. But I do legitimately worry for a lot of people and the country in general.
Walta, are you at all concerned about, I guess the safety of certain groups?
Well, okay, so right now I don't worry. I don't feel like we should worry because he just says what comes to his mind. He's just pandering to his base. I feel like if he got elected and tried to implement the things that he said, hopefully the country would unite and be like, that's ridiculous what you're saying. But right now, because he's speaking to his supporters and his supporters support him. But if he became the president, there's so much more people in the country. And, you know, like if he makes a bill, it has to pass through Senate and Congress. And so there are all these checks and balances before what he says becomes law. But also, you know, politics is corrupt. And so there's also the fear that things might take a dark turn. But right now, I'm not worried. I feel like he's just talking shit and doesn't have the power yet.
Yeah.
You guys are all so much more optimistic than I am. I mean, I would, you know, we talk about Trump, we talk about his racism, we talk about how he wants to, you know, register Muslims and he wants to build this wall and all that nonsense. You know, I think it behooves us to remember that we have cases like this in American history already that we like to forget. And one that I think has a lot of parallels with this is the internment of Japanese citizens during World War II. And I think we all have to remember that the man who signed the executive order, the unilateral action, he didn't have to go through Congress to do any of it, the executive order to intern Japanese citizens is like the number one liberal Democrat icon of American history. It was FDR, it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, like the closest thing to a liberal socialist we've ever had in the United States, and he's the guy that herded the Japanese in the internment camps. And he did it with an executive order, and even the Supreme Court didn't stop him. The Korematsu cases, the Supreme Court ruled on the side of the president.
Why ultimately do you think that decision was made? Was it fear? Was it
fear, racism, that kind of immediate visceral backlash right after Pearl Harbor. But the thing is that, you know, we've always had this kind of issue about the other in American culture. And in America specifically, that ingrains itself on people that we can visually identify as being different from ourselves. And I think that's why the Japanese were immediately targeted and you didn't have like German Americans being herded into camps or anything like that. And I think that plays a lot into exactly what Donald Trump does. Like when he attacks groups of people, you know, whether it be people because they're overweight or because of their race or because of their gender identity, it's people that his supporters are able to identify just by looking at them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is a terrifying thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
really horrifying.
that's where we're at.
Trump could put us like back in the second Civil War. Do you realize how many Hispanic people are in America? Do you remember the Alamo? I'm from Texas. Do you remember the Alamo? Shit didn't go well. We got trapped. They killed Daniel Boone and all the rest of them. Man.
They
It's
did.
crazy.
Well, actually, while we're talking about that, let's shift focuses just to a little bit of kind of about American security. I guess a few questions I have for you. The first one is, obviously there is a large Hispanic population, especially living in the southern United States.
Shit,
Well, yeah,
Everywhere.
all over, yeah. Well, what's the follow-up to that is there are large undocumented populations. Is there a fear that we have these people in the country that we don't really know who they are or why they're here? Are any of you concerned about that?
No. Are you concerned when you walk out of your front door who the people are walking around? If you stay in like a gated community, hey, you know Dave that stays 4 houses down. But this is the world. It's bigger than just a United States. But if there was ever a civil war, there's already so many different nationalities here that it would just tear us apart. And that's already what's happening. This is the melting pot. My man was fantasizing. There's numerous other countries where people are fantasizing, and it's because of the American dream. I mean, this is a place where you could have nothing and tomorrow wake up with everything.
Do
Or
any
vice
of
versa.
you
Vice versa,
Yeah.
too.
do any of you think that there should ever be limits on who we're letting into the country?
No. It's too late. We don't even do you realize America really doesn't even own most of America anymore? China owns most of this shit. Japan owns this shit. We've already sold everything that we have. All we're sitting around now is gaining money off of the dream. We're really sinking. When the rat starts leaving, That's when I'm like, fuck this shit. I already got my passport, and I know where I'm going. I already know where I'm going.
Where are you headed?
I can't
where
tell you because then everybody will want to go. I will tell you, there's a yellow brick road that goes to the compound. You might need to find the yellow brick road.
Walta and Greg, what do you guys think? Is there? I mean, do you have any type of fears about undocumented people being in this country, or should there be any limit, or I guess what needs to change in terms of the way we let people into this country or don't let people into this country?
Okay, so I don't have any fear over the fact that there are undocumented people in this country.
Walta's just not afraid of anything.
Well, I mean, they came here for a better life, for better education or economic opportunity. I feel like why would you be scared of them? I guess, they're not terrorists. They didn't come here to cause unrest. They just came here to make a better life for themselves. And I feel like, so we should allow people into the country, but there should also be a limit because the land is finite, the resources are finite, but still the people, we should still extend equal opportunity to the people coming in.
As long as people want to come here, we should let them come here.
Yeah.
Which there seems to be less and less reasons to maybe want to come here lately. But
have you been out of America?
I've been to Canada. Does that count?
That shit doesn't count.
Well, in Kenya, people would look at America as the land of opportunity. Everyone wanted to go to America. I remember when I was moving here, my friends were jealous of me because they were like, oh, you're going to go to a good school, you're going to have a good job. And I came here, and I like America, but it's not like how they show you on TV. It's not the promised land. It's shiny, but then you get closer and you realize it's plastic.
It's like a Tinder date. That's interesting because I mean, Greg and Walta, I mean, you both said that overseas there's kind of this talk of America being the land of opportunity, and I think historically, I mean, we do talk about ourselves as a melting pot and having all these opportunities that anyone can go, from rags to riches, whatever the story is now. Do you guys think that we're living up to that, or do we still have that place in the world?
I think let me unpack this just a little bit with first of all, Australia culturally is not dissimilar to the US at all. And I think that's where my story is different from many other immigrants. When I expressed my desire to move to the US, a lot of my friends and family back home were like, why would you want to go there? America sucks. It's kind of like, but the reason that they do that is here, let me, a little personal anecdote for an analogy is I'm the oldest of 3 kids. And so that meant that whenever mom and dad went out, the responsibility of being in charge was mine. And my younger brother and my younger sister hated that. They hated that I was big brother. They resented me telling them to do anything. They didn't like the fact that they had to listen to me. But if I was doing anything, if I was reading, if I was painting, if I was playing video games, whatever, you can bet your last buck that they wanted to do it too at the same time as me. And that's the way that America is viewed by a lot of the rest of the world. That American influence permeates throughout a lot of culture.
We're even taught that here, like American history. You're just taught American history.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a picture of like a city in Saudi Arabia or Africa? They make it seem like it's just desert. It's not actually desert. There are beautiful places that have large populations and people with money all over the planet. Australia is a good one. They always show the outback, but y'all have cities also, and it's just the same. It's just
you look at the way that Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Australia to an extent are portrayed in American movies and TV shows, and it's these vast, barren wastelands with no people living. Maybe you'll see an elephant run past or something like that. It's a misrepresentation, like as if Americans are the only thing that matters and American culture is the only thing that matters. And again, Australia resents that in many ways. They don't like
the world
admitting.
resents that.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, but I remember the amount of revulsion that was in the media to any kind of American influence that came into Australia But you can bet when the newest American movie came out, or an American artist put out an album, or In-N-Out wanted to open a restaurant in Sydney or something like that, they were all over it.
I was about to say, then build your own fucking Hollywood.
Right, exactly. They built Fox Studios down there. You look at all the movies that have been shot down there.
I'm so sorry.
No, I mean like The Matrix that was shot in downtown Sydney, and a lot of these movies get filmed down there, and it's there's a fascination in return with with Australian culture that people want to get to know us more, but there's still that impression that we're all living in the outback, and that we're all kind of Crocodile Dundee type of characters who have an Aboriginal tracker to help us find our way to the store. That's serious conversations that I've had with real live Americans who have jobs.
I really hope that when they were building a Fox Studios down there, someone at least pitched the idea of calling it Dingo Studios.
I feel like they missed an opportunity.
They absolutely did.
Isn't the whole thing about the Outback is that no one lives there because it's terrible?
Yeah, what we call the Outback, you guys call
everything
flyover
is just trying to
country.
kill you
Right,
constantly.
yeah. Like, is it full of like spiders and rocks?
It is
lizards?
quite literally nothing but desert. When you get 2 hours west of Sydney, which is on the east coast for anybody who knows that little about Australian geography, and literally everything from 2 hours west of Sydney, you get over the mountain range and it's just nothing but open plains and desert until you get to the west coast. And by the way, Australia is the size of the lower 48.
Right.
So try and imagine that if you're in, say, New York City, or like you get past State College, Pennsylvania, and then all of a sudden there's just nothing until San Francisco. Like just nothing but desert and nothing but wide open country. So I've used this.
Right.
I've used this in my stand-up before. I've said so it's exactly like the lower 48. But.
Yeah. As long as we're kind of talking about, that's actually hearing some of the differences is kind of interesting, and also the similarities. Walta, from your backgrounds, what are some of the biggest differences that you notice here versus anywhere else you've been?
Okay, so I lived in the city, and I lived in Nairobi, and I moved from Nairobi to Columbus, and I didn't experience as much culture shock then, but then when I went to college in a rural town, Oberlin, I experienced culture shock then, because I had no conception of American rural towns. Everything you see on TV is the city, just people living in the city. And then, when I moved here, people assumed that I came from the country and I couldn't speak English, and I just didn't know anything. But I was a student. I went to school. I guess there was just a lot of ignorance, and just a lot of ignorance because, so what people see on TV about Africa is just villages and starving children. They don't see the metro area. They don't see the culture. It's like people dancing or having parties, or they don't see Africans. They just see a stereotype. And so I felt like people put that stereotype on me, but then slowly over time, once they got to know me, I feel like people learned a little bit about Africa just by me being around.
The African representative.
Well, I think actually a lot of people really find that interesting in your stand-up, that you do talk a lot about, where your backgrounds, and that's
yes.
that it's a little bit of a culture shock to some people, but I think it's also very interesting. So
yeah. And so I look at it I'm from a different place. I have a different culture, but still we're people. We have the same needs and desires, and so I just try to show people that I'm just like them, even though I'm from this different place. Yeah.
Gilli, I kind of want to pose this question to you too. Having come from Texas and obviously from a different background than I think anyone else at the table, being here in Columbus, what do you think are some of the biggest differences you notice versus other places that you've been?
Well, I when I was growing up, we used to go everywhere. So I've been in all 50 states and outside of America, and everywhere has its own little differences, but it's everybody's people. we're all animals. We all do the same things. People, it's just different climates, and that's where people get caught up. But once you actually meet somebody, like I know some people that have never seen black people, and I know some black people that never seen white people. It's just about being familiar with shit. Some people never leave their own neighborhood, which is strange to me. But I mean, if you don't have the means to get somewhere, even people that have the means, they just don't want to get anywhere. You have to experience shit in life. And the more people you meet, the more you see that we are the same. So it's kind of weird speaking about immigration to a person that hasn't took the time to sit down and get to talk to anybody regular. Like, I can't see having a conversation with Trump. I can see him being an arrogant asshole. Trump, can I get your autograph? He's got shit to do, you know?
Yeah. No, my experience is a little bit similar to Walter's in that I moved from a major city. I grew up in Sydney. It was 5 million people. I mean, we're talking like San Francisco size here. And I moved initially to Cleveland, which city to city, you know, I grew up in the suburbs. I was living in the suburbs. It wasn't, you know, that different. But then I met a woman from Sandusky and moved to there. And that's like less than 50,000 people. And the weird thing about it is that if I had the appearance of being from a foreign country, I would have just, you know, been like, hey, I'm not from around here. But what I felt was that this is a pretty white bread town and I look just like them. I should probably try and sound like them as well. So I adopted a Midwestern accent, and I, you know, because that way nobody knows. You're just some guy who just moved from Cleveland. It's not a, you know, it's not a big deal. So
why they just assumed that you were from Cleveland?
They
why does this guy sound funny? Oh, he must be from
that's
Cleveland.
the Cleveland accent, right? That's,
right.
Yeah. They just mispronounce certain words. It's just
Right.
yeah.
and by that stage, I was only like 6 months into being in the U.S., so I still wasn't pronouncing my R's correctly. I was like, because we talk like we're from Boston, that was what my accent was. It was kind of an American-Australian hybrid, and I sounded like I was from New England, but I'd never been to New England, so I couldn't fake it that well. I'm like, yeah, I'm from Framingham, Massachusetts, you know? Like, I couldn't fake that well, you know? So I was just like, yeah, I just came here from Cleveland. And once I got to know people, then I was like, oh, okay, there's something you should probably know. I'm actually from Australia.
Which I'll say that too. Actually, I mean, I'll say it for all of you. I really like that all of you kind of bring some of your backgrounds into the stand-up you do. And I mean, I think all of you kind of hit on it a little bit with everything you just said. I think one of the best ways to overcome things like prejudice or racism, like you just have to be around people that are different than you. Because most of the time people are prejudiced, it's because they just don't know. Right. And I mean, it's kind of this like willful ignorance that we have in America. To kind of wrap things up, what I'd kind of like to ask you is, I think that in spite of some of the things that we've seen in this last election cycle, I think America in general is moving in a good direction. In general, I hope you guys would kind of agree with that. We do hear things like, you know, like we're talking about cultural sensitivity, or even the idea of like being colorblind, or which those may or may not, you know, be the best words to use or even the best ideas to have. I don't think, you know, any of you would agree that we should ignore culture. I guess what I want to ask you is, what do you expect from society to try to bring everyone together and really kind of embrace multiculturalism in America? What's the biggest thing that you guys would like to see?
That's why I do comedy, man, because, I mean, we're basically all the same people. Nobody asked to wake up and be you. I mean, there's not a point that you can remember that I was like, man, I want a tan skin. I want to wake up with tan skin, guy. It just doesn't happen.
I've actually done that one a lot.
I can't tell you how many times I've wished for that.
That one time before I went to sleep, but I was high, God. You know, that doesn't count. But I mean, we're basically all the same people. We all have the same faults. We all have the same insecurities. It's just about who you want to be when you wake up. And that's the beauty about America. It's about who you want to be. You can come from a trash can in Australia, fucking slum in.
And we lived in a pretty nice house, actually. I mean, we were middle class, but come on.
I wasn't calling you broke. I was just saying. Did he just call me broke? No, No,
you could call me broke now because I work on American wages, but before I was doing great.
I mean, well, you would never look at me and think I came from black oil. And I had black bootleggers in my family. But I've never wanted for anything. But I've got to grow up and experience what have-nots have gone to. And I have friends. I have a friend in high school that his dad invented fiber optic cable, if you know what that is. Mm-hmm. So you know.
Yeah, we have that in Australia too.
Yeah, he had a Ferrari. He had a Ferrari in high school.
Oh, you guys are doing really well there.
Yeah, we got running water a few years ago. Yeah, it's great.
It's beautiful.
Do you guys have Netflix yet? Is that?
Did you get rid of the tumbleweed?
We got Netflix. We're still working on the chill because it's always hot. That was the joke.
Well, we laugh and joke in America about internet, but there are places on this planet that don't have that, and some of it's because of their government. And so, when you speak of different planets, like not planets, different countries.
All right, now you've gone too far.
Put the gloves up.
Now
I don't want to.
Now you crossed the line, Gilli.
Didn't they cancel Ancient Aliens?
Right.
It's on now. It's back on.
I'm just saying. I mean, when you come from different places, he just totally sidetracked me. Now I was thinking about he's about to punch me. I'm sorry, I disrespected this.
It would count as a hate crime if I did that. There's no way. There's no way I'm walking out of this neighborhood.
You would get away. That. They would just sprinkle some crack on the black guy. You know how it goes. We're in Columbus. I don't look down on people because I know people that are racist and I know people that love people, and it doesn't matter. It's about how you were raised and what you were taught. That's why ignorance will never die, because there's always some ignorant ass person trying to pass it on. And whether he's doing it knowingly or not, this shit's gonna happen. But what we need to do with comedy, I try to show some love. You know, it's about the good times in life. Everybody thinks about the hard times, but the good times stand out also. And if you don't have that many good times in your life, when you get to that last breath, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah. And with any kind of societal change, any kind of, evolution is a process. It's slow, it's gradual, it takes increments and steps, and it takes a long time. And there's always going to be some kind of pushback. We've seen it with various, with women getting the right to vote, with, the abolition of Jim Crow laws, with any kind of societal change. I'm talking about here in the States, but this has happened worldwide. Anytime that there's been any kind of societal change, there has been, people who have dug their heels in, who have almost been galvanized by the fact that this change is going on around them.
Right.
And the phrase "the wrong side of history" gets used a lot, and I think it rings true, because at the end of the day, I don't wish harm on any of these people, but a lot of them do die bitter over what they're seeing. And unfortunately, that's the side effect of, you're always going to have one hateful person for every two loving people out there.
That's the living hell.
Yeah, that's the reality of what we face, and it happens in Australia.
And usually that one hateful person is yelling louder than
absolutely
anybody else.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
It's the loudest, dumbest voices that get the national attention, because they're the ones, they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. They're the ones that are squeaking the most. And
so we're all voting for Trump, right? Is that where we?
I'm not a citizen. I can't vote anyway.
Who is Trump's vice president? If Bernie Sanders is vice president, I might fuck with you. Trump. He does still have his hair. You know what I'm saying? It's been a long fucking time. Some people get brains and some people get hair.
Bernie could use some of that. But before, go ahead. Yeah.
So what I want to see in society is for people to be open-minded, and to a certain extent, based on how you were raised, like your parents put thoughts into your head, and so now you're thinking your parents' thoughts and not your own thoughts. And
get out and experience something for yourself.
Just like meet different people and have your own thoughts. And we have more similarities than we do differences, and our differences are just interesting. They're not things worth fighting over. And so I just wish people would be more open-minded and just hang out with all kinds of people. And one of the reasons I like doing comedy is because I have different experiences, but I'm still making all these people laugh. We're united in laughter. That we have that in common.
You found a way you can relate to them.
Yeah.
That your experiences, that people can understand that, even if they don't know what it's like to be you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did y'all have to read The Animal Farm in high school?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites.
You didn't
I
have
think
to,
so,
but I
yeah.
read it.
Read
did
that
anyway.
read that in my junior year. Yeah.
Yeah, most people need to read that book because it lets you see that just if you're going to be on top, you're going to be on top. And if you're on the bottom, you're going to be mad at the guy on top. So just stay off the bottom. That's the important thing in America. Stay off the
And
bottom.
in the end, you sometimes get sent to a glue factory.
Yeah. life is a big circle. Sometimes you're on top, and when you're on top, you never think you're on bottom. And vice versa.
That's a really positive ending, Pat. Thanks. Before
Four
we-
legs good, two legs bad. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Let me keep two.
Before we wrap up here, because Gilli's almost out of tequila over there, I do have one last thing I want to bring up, and it's actually almost very appropriate that I almost forgot this. This is actually a question I want to direct at Gilli, and it is about Native Americans. I think that we're starting to see kind of increased media attention for a lot of different minority groups. I think, unfortunately, though, Native Americans very rarely are one of those. It's kind of I think Pat said it earlier. It's a part of history that just kind of gets brushed over. So I guess my question to you, and like I said, it's very appropriate that I almost forgot to mention this. Why aren't we talking about Native Americans more?
That's a good point. History and racism is so bad in America that you totally forgot what happened to the Indians. It's fucked up. But we also got caught up with what Jews had happen in the Holocaust. We had 100 million killed here on American soil by Spain. You know what I mean? So fuck all of y'all. That's that's basically what I wanted to get off of my chest.
Right. That is not how I thought that conversation was going to go.
But also the fledgling United States was just as guilty as Spain or France or Great Britain was. I mean, sorry to interrupt you.
You know why? It's because if history hasn't taught you anything, it's that once you have something good, somebody's going to come and take that shit. So,
Yeah.
hey, and we've done shit all over the globe to everybody. I'm sorry what we did to Australia. Nothing. We did nothing.
No, we did it to our own people.
They did
But
to us.
we had a systemic ethnic cleansing that went on with the Aborigines by early white settlers.
Dude, the fucking
it kind
British.
it runs parallel to what happened to the Native Americans. I mean, entire tribes of Aborigines were wiped out. Children were taken away from their families and were brought up in white neighborhoods and white families to be educated as white people. It was known as the stolen generation. And the Australian government has been under pressure for decades. This has been going on literally my entire life and probably a long time before that, to own up to this and to take responsibility for the actions of our ancestors and say, you know, what we did to these people based on the color of their skin and based on their lifestyle that was different to ours that we wanted to build was shameful. And I see a lot of parallels that run between the two countries. So
yeah, well, everything that's been done on this country has been done all over the globe on every continent. So the biggest thing is like knowledge, because like in America we teach you that Christopher Columbus found America. He didn't find shit. Okay. There was Chinese here. Shit, we had Mongolians here. We had Europeans here thousands of years ago. And only if you open your mind to world history will you understand that. So, I mean, we're all the same people.
And Christopher Columbus was kind of a bastard, and that's kind of why it's
He was a real
weird
fucker. Like, it's not kind of a bastard. Like, the man
No,
is
there's-
one of the great evils
He
of
was an
history.
alcoholic.
Like,
He was an alcoholic.
he was that, but
it's a
that's
weird
really the evilest thing he did.
it's a weird dichotomy. It's a weird dichotomy living in the city of Columbus that was named after this guy. I've lived here for 4 years. I absolutely love it here. This is my second hometown after Sydney. And I'm proud to say that I live here. But there's always that thing in the back of my mind, like, this town is named after a real piece of shit. Like, can we change that? Can we just sort of like? But what would you change it to?
Well, the whole country is named after racists, so it doesn't even matter. I mean, it's about when you grew up and what time period. We're changing history right now. It's weird, and I don't know if it's for the best or for the worst, but we're changing it right now. So do your part, man. Get out and spread some positive energy.
Yeah.
And I think shitting on Christopher Columbus is probably a good way to wrap up the episode. That's actually
Columbus.
in terms of American history. I think that's actually a good place to end. I'm gonna break FiliBUSTED protocol just a little bit here, and Pat and I can argue about this later. Normally, at the end of an episode, we announce a winner, and they kind of get their FiliBUSTED moment to just say whatever they want. Just because I think everybody hopefully is very happy with how this went. I kind of want to give each of you just about 30 seconds, so each of you can kind of have your own FiliBUSTED moment. This is your moment to plug a show you have coming up. If you want to talk about something that we didn't mention on the episode, you want to talk about something we did mention, each of you, this is just kind of your little moment to say whatever you want. And Pat, I'm going to give you a heads up on this one. I am going to be coming to you, so I'm going to save you for last, though, so we don't have 2 minutes of dead air on this episode.
God forbid I think of an intelligent response
I'm
opening my mouth.
I'm giving you time on this one. If you guys ever want to see Pat just absolutely like deer in headlights terrified, I would look at our technology episode and just zoom in on his face during that. It's like he's never been on stage before. And I'm going to actually, I'm going to open it up to you, Greg. Just about 30 seconds. Just this is your moment. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, this is a city and a place where I've managed to meet a lot of people who have helped me achieve the things that I want to do and continue to explore new things. And comedy has been one of those things. Basically, anywhere that you see anybody here on this panel, like at any open mic, you'll see me too. You'll see me at the Funny Bone next month doing the talent search and everything like that. So,
What day is that?
April 27, I believe it is, off the top of my head. It's a Wednesday night. So if you can make it, that'd be fantastic. I don't think I'm competing against anybody at this table, which is nice.
You will be.
Oh, I'm sure. Eventually I will be, but no. No, this has been a great place to do the things that I want to do. And I think that's what the American dream is for anybody, whether you're born here or whether you come here chasing something. We're all looking for something. And this has been a place where I've been able to find it. So come watch me find it.
No, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Walta?
Yes. So I like living in Columbus. I've met all sorts of different kinds of people here. And, I remember when I was moving to America, like racism was, it wasn't a thing on my mind because I'd never experienced it in Kenya. But then also it was because it is a big deal in America. And so I didn't know how life was going to be like. But I haven't experienced a lot of racism and living in Columbus. And there are a lot of good people here, and I like Columbus. And then also, so I'm going to be doing the Funny Bone competition on the 23rd, if this airs before then. And then also on March 31st, there is a benefit show at Cafe Kerouac to raise money for Planned Parenthood. It's a stand-up comedy fundraiser. That'll be a lot of fun.
Sounds good.
Good cause.
Oh, magnificent. We started doing Trump. You know what I feel about Trump? I'm just playing. This is my 30 seconds. You can catch me at the Funny Bone April 13th, also in the competition. You can catch me Mondays at Shrunken Head, Tuesdays at Scarlet and Gray or Bossy. Wednesdays, you can catch me at either Deep Space or Barrel. Thursdays, you can catch me at Zeno's. Or Friday and Saturday and Sunday, you can catch me at my house chilling, smoking good, and drinking nice. If you want to get me on Facebook, it's Chris Gillikin. Same thing on Twitter. Chris Gillikin at Andre Gilli 3000. Bam! Search for me. You got to find me. Catch me on YouTube or wherever. And Pat, I've also heard that you come whenever the fuck you want to. You just come here whenever you want.
To this house?
To this house.
Oh. I'm here occasionally. I
told Walter that we were going to say something.
I have again been caught off guard on this podcast.
Pat is part black because he comes whenever the fuck he wants to. And we love him for it.
For everyone listening, Pat was the last person to show up tonight, in spite of being the co-host of the show.
He was a gentleman and let the other party
showing
finish
up very
first.
fashionably about 10 minutes late, but
about 15.
He still
He
made
almost
it.
got robbed out front. He was so late. It's
By
kinda weird.
you.
Well, we recognized you, so we left you alone.
It's like, give me all your... Oh, wait, it's Pat. This could get awkward.
I was just going to take a lighter. I just needed a lighter for myself.
He'll turn up tomorrow night at Shrunken Head like, you took my wallet.
Get this guy. Oh, no, he just has boring actuary manuals in his bag. There's no real money in there.
And Pat, why don't you take us home here?
I know I had something really in-depth to say about where America is in her history at this point in time, but...
We're here.
No. No, I will say that I am really pleased about how this episode went. I thought we brought up a really great range of really important topics. Just to wrap things up, I guess I will say that America is kind of in this weird time of flux right now, and multiculturalism and immigration is absolutely part of that. And I do think that this country is coming to terms with that in a slow and painful, but ultimately the correct way. The United States has a very long, well, not long compared to Europe or the rest of the world, but compared to how we think of as long in the United States, a long history of casual and institutionalized racism. And I think that's coming to the forefront, and we now have multiple generations that are cognizant of that. And are impacting the way that the institutions of this nation work. And you can see that at play with the Republican Party, where they're grasping at straws and desperately trying to hold on to the craziest members of the party because it's all they have left, because they have alienated their youngest voters and chased away their center-leaning centrist voters. And you see it on the side of the Democratic Party as well, where the party itself is much more cognizant of things that its candidates might say in that racial and immigration sphere. Was there anything else that we wanted to go over outside of that?
Now you're putting me on the spot.
What if you name this one Drunk History and Politics Edition? Because I'm fucked up. I don't even know why I let you give me this glass of magnificentness and then ask me political questions and shit, because I had some strong answers. I was at home.
That's the show. That's what we do here. Yeah.
Drunk Homeland Security with Gilli.
Poof. Let's strike a question.
I will say, just to kind of wrap things up, though, that our backlash towards immigration in the recent years, I personally feel, as the descendant of immigrants, as the son of an immigrant, specifically a refugee immigrant who came to the United States to escape religious extremism in their home country, that our backlash to immigration in any sense, in any form, is just the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard in my entire life. The United States has always been built on multiculturalism, varying degrees of opinions, varying viewpoints, and people from other backgrounds coming to the United States and bringing their skills and their viewpoints into our economy. Whether it be from traditional laborers all the way up to Albert Einstein, the United States' main strength, our main soft power, is our ability to attract people from other nations that want to come here and live and work and augment our workforce, augment our higher education systems, and augment our political body. And if we lose that, that's going to be the end of the American generation. The American empire isn't going to end because of anything mundane like money. We've got more of it than anybody could ever make in the rest of history. It's going to end if we lose that ability to continue to attract the best and the brightest from every other nation on the planet.
Amen.
Yeah,
Here.
Exactly. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of FiliBUSTED. Again, thank you to our panelists for being here. Thank you to Pat Deering. Huge thank you to Brian Doney for filming, recording, and editing, and everything else he does. We will see you guys soon, and that's going to be it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Fuck you, Doney.
Toddlers should not have guns.